All righty, well, let's do it. First, my name is Scotty Bernick. I'm a landscape architect with Reagan Smith and Associates. I'm here on behalf of NHC and Flournoy Development Group, and appreciate everyone's time tonight. I wanted to do a neighborhood meeting just to show you potential projects that we're looking at and give you some details on it. The project is called the Optima Franklin. So in terms of location, you'll see the sort of the upper right map shows downtown Franklin, and then you'll see sort of the Cool Springs Galleria area. And then the larger map on the left highlights specifically the area and the parcel that we're looking at. So it's actually the intersection of two main arterial roads. You'll see where West McEwen Drive and Cool Springs Boulevard intersect. And if you're familiar with the area, you'll see that there's the existing NHC facility there directly to the left. So this is property owned by NHC. They're one of the partners on the project and have had this land for quite some time. I've also had the privilege to work with them and look at development and as changes as we study this for several years. So excited to look at this. Directly to the west, you'll see Mac Hatcher, and then Franklin Road is sort of there due northwest. I just quickly wanted to talk about sort of different layers in what we're doing. So tonight we're here because we're proposing to rezone a piece of property. And as we look at properties and we look at zoning, there's layers of it. And the bottom layer sort of within the system is something called a land use policy. So on the screen, you'll see that Envision Franklin has qualified and classified the property as regional commerce. In general, what the land use policy, what Envision Franklin does is it guides the planning department, the community, the planning commission, the BOMA members as to what's appropriate in terms of development as our city grows. In general, the regional commerce section promotes high intensity sort of activity centers, sort of specific areas where the city sees growth, areas where there's existing infrastructure already in place. You'll see that our site, which is highlighted in purple, is adjacent to a lot of other areas in purple. And again, it's sort of a logical area. You'll see I-65, we have Cool Springs and West McEwen. And sort of the goal of this area is that you're building architecture, engages, it defines the streetscape, you provide walkability, and things of that nature. So that's, again, the sort of the underlying zoning, underlying land use. And we're not amending that or changing that, but wanted to give a little bit of information on sort of what we're looking at. So the existing zoning today is a zone called RC6. That stands for Regional Commerce 6. In short, it's an area that allows and sort of promotes a good mixed use of intensity, buildings up to 5 and 6 stories tall. It has uses, anything from commercial to office to retail to civic buildings and to multifamily, or the allowed uses sort of by right. You'll see the RC6 again is sort of the pink area, and that extends along the main corridor of Cool Springs Boulevard. And then sort of the light purple area is this planned development district. You'll see the site adjacent to us on the west, I think was recently zoned to PD. And that's the zoning district that we're requesting with this application. Part of a planned district, you'll have specific requirements. It allows some flexibility in terms of unique site-specific items such as setbacks, and some elements like that. So it's a very detailed version of a plan. Whenever a plan goes through and you see that plan, what gets submitted and reviewed and ultimately hopefully approved is the plan. So it's a very specific plan. that goes through. So we're requesting a zoning to a planned district, and it's contiguous with the land use policy of regional commerce of Envision Franklin, as well as sort of the underlying zoning, if you will. As part of our project, we look at existing conditions, sort of the inventory analysis of a site. This one's no different. We study to look at, again, you'll see sort of the slopes. We study to see, where earth was moved previously. On this one, we know that when the NHC facility was done, that there was some movement done sort of on this vacant site that we're looking at. We look at soils, we look at utilities, and we study hydrology of the site. So just part of the system that, again, we look at sort of at the beginning of every project. Here's the proposed plan, and wanted just, again, to sort of highlight a couple things that I've already said before. So currently, the site's main entrance is at a signalized intersection of Cool Springs Boulevard and West McEwen. It's a site that, as you've driven by, you've probably seen. I've seen some school buses that have sat there, and then the existing NHC site sits directly to the west. And currently, the NHC site utilizes an entrance separate from the signalized intersection of the site. And what we've looked at is again a very strategic mixed-use development that complies with the zoning code and some of the goals and the vision of Envision Franklin as a whole. Things that are highlighted in the zoning code, and things that, I guess, as designers and planners we want to achieve are really places you want to be, you want to work, you want them to be walkable, have logical connections. You want them to work with, the requirements for storm, with the grades of the site, and again, sort of maximize the experience and look at how the development works with the surrounding conditions. Again, infrastructure of roadways, infrastructure of utilities, and things of that nature. So the site that's rendered is roughly 18 acres of a larger 34-acre site. So the existing NHC site as it sits today is 34 acres there. And again, a couple of things from the zoning code that are very important guidelines is how the buildings work and interact. You'll see, on this development, buildings A, B, C, D, E, and F all have frontage. So we're either fronting on Cool Springs Boulevard, or we're fronting on an internal spine into the development, and that's by design. That's part of the visual, aesthetics of a site. When you drive by, having parking and say dumpsters and things of that sort of secondary in nature. And again, helps sort of create this walkable system, this place for different types of uses to sort of live together. So this was sort of a key factor. So with any site, the existing conditions, the geometry of the site, everything plays into it. So on this one, we have a spine road that comes into the site on a signalized intersection, and then have provided sort of a loop system around through the site. Also wanted to note a little bit about connectivity. That's another thing the zoning code and really, I think, as we evolve the plans and the growth in the city is how do we provide logical connection points. On this development, we're showing just to the right. So here, adjacent to the existing office area, a future connection point that would allow that development to connect into the site. Additionally, working with NHC in the city, taking advantage of having a signalized intersection for this development. What that does is allow the existing NHC facility to get through this side and use the signalized intersection. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but in doing so, we can sort of study and manipulate how the traffic flows on existing Cool Springs Boulevard and then through the site. So currently there's a full access at the existing NHC site, meaning traffic coming into and out of that site can cross Cool Springs Boulevard. It can come out and take a left, which is due east, or movements going eastbound can go left in the site. With this development, again, we're able to sort of manipulate how that works and force the majority of the traffic through and at the signalized intersection, which is a really nice safety element on a site plan. In doing that, we would restrict and have a right in, right out at the existing NHC site. Again, that will still allow movements to from that side exiting the site to go due west, but force it to use the main intersection. Also, part of every plan, and we'll get into this a little bit, is looking at sort of the lay of the land, the slopes, the existing conditions that you have, the tree canopies, some of those main elements. So I looked at a lot of those features. This is a beautiful piece of property. It sort of sits up high, a little bit higher on a hill, has quite a bit of a drop off to the back of the site towards the Little Harpeth. And then again, it's sort of within this commercial area of Cool Springs that we all know. Wanted to highlight a little bit and talk about uses. So I mentioned before some of the uses that are consistent with the current zoning that's in place is sort of no different than the uses that we're proposing now. Highlighted here in A at the front is a proposed hotel. We expect it to be 5 to 6 stories tall, likely a max of 130 keys, and wanted to sort of highlight this as we look at the way this corridor develops over time. Again, having double frontage, having sort of an entry into not only our development, but to really place the building's facade along the streetscape to embrace the goals of Envision Franklin. Here in sort of this peach color is the proposed commercial space at the site. So, in this area, although we have lots of commercial space, with the mall and with the development, directly to our east, still want to incorporate these, smaller scale community type spaces that can support, this development and some, existing development around. With this product, we're looking sort of for the peach color areas to be a mix of office space, possibly being a bank, some opportunities for retail, and just general commercial uses like that. B and C, we expect to be between 1 and 2 stories tall, whereas the D and E and the little nodes above that would be ground level retail. So anytime we look at a site, we sort of think of, how successful can it be? Where does it need to go strategically on a site plan? Specifically knowing if we have commercial in the back of a site, it won't survive, right? It won't do well. So, but how do we engage that and activate the streetscape with these really important key parts to a true mixed use development? Again, that we're striving to get with the city of Franklin. Here in the back of the site, which is building F, and then parts of building D and E, you'll see a multifamily component. It's proposing 348 multifamily units. They are 4 stories tall. Again, on D and E, the front part of that would be commercial with some living component in the back and above the commercial space. Equally on building F, you'll have the same thing. So sort of along the streetscape, you'll have the commercial component with the multifamily component in the back. Again, part of working with NHC and Flournoy on this is there's some excitement to have a multifamily use adjacent to the existing NHC facility. There's some logical thoughts on how families and residents can, age in place, equally have family that could be, near a loved one while they're in the facility. and sort of working through some of that. At the same time, it's exciting in order to support the commercial components that are within this development. So again, as we all sort of sat through the COVID era of brick and mortar and retail and what that does to it, having some walkable type spaces, near multifamily, mixed use, some commercial, so some office space is a really healthy balance of uses on the site. And then here highlighted is the proposed sort of amenity leasing. Again, that's sort of the view you'll have coming down the side. It's a great way to sort of enter into with these sort of nice amenity spaces that are envisioned just beyond. Again, just sort of highlighting all the uses. You can see these sort of working together now, with the main development really having a lot of energy on the main interior streetscapes along Cool Springs Boulevard. I'll show you some studies later that sort of work through some of the massing of the site and how that works and sort of the vision for that. And in terms of circulation, something that's really, really exciting about this project is an existing greenway that lies along the very back of the site. Currently, it's not very well connected to the city. That's slowly changing with some development that's recently been approved to the left. And as the greenway sort of extends, this will be a key component. So the greenway currently is not within an easement. The proposed project would recommend, and I guess we're dedicating an access easement for the greenway, the pavement that's there today. In addition to that, here sort of on the left, we're proposing to extend the greenway up from the back of the site to Cool Springs Boulevard. So perhaps we have a trailhead or some kind of pedestrian entrance to this area, but it allows a really nice, very natural scenic experience for tenants of this site, for existing NHC tenants, for our neighbors to the west, and really the community as a whole. Allows these options to have safe ways to travel, to jump on existing sidewalks that not only lead to the commercial and our component, but just down the street to the thousands of square foot we have down there. So sort of a exciting opportunity to be able to really offer something that's a true win for the community, for the existing facility, for the future development here as it sits today. Additionally, we see more of a passive, natural component of a trail that would provide access from sort of the tenants on this proposed site. And you'll see all of that in light blue. In terms of vehicular access, as I mentioned before, the key is, how do we provide service and logical circulation through a site without making it a primary point? We have a few ways we're able to do that. One is to limit how the streetscape looks for the streetscape that's specific for cars. So along our main boulevard, we'll have parallel parking only. Along the back of our site, we have opportunities to loop. There are a few opportunities for emergency access points. You'll see that sort of highlighted there at the back of the NHC, future connection to the existing office to the east of our site. And then some connection points to the existing NHC facility that we talked about before. So again, as we look at a site, it's nice to have lots of options of circulation, and it's great to be able to prioritize those into what's needed for more access for service versus the experience you have as you come into a site. I also should have noticed that the pink and highlighted area are the sidewalks. In a lot of developments, I think sidewalks are sometimes overlooked, but it's one of the most key components to the amenity of this entire space. So what happens is we have these streets, but when we introduce and lay in these sidewalks that connect to the public right-of-way and the greenway, it's just an extension of this entire amenity that we have throughout the entire site. It could be as simple as, going from the greenway to the right of way, or providing, an activity loop for residents or workers of the site to, make laps during a lunch break. So again, really nice touch to be able to incorporate to any plan. Also, within the city requirements, there's requirements for parkland in open space, and that happens at the tune of having impact fees. You can achieve that by offering specific types of spaces. So although there's a lot more green on the site than we're showing here, we specifically wanted to highlight some of these key components. So in the lighter green areas are areas that we see being contributed towards sort of the parkland of the site. And the way that works in the city is you have options to have parkland space for public use as well as for private use. And the areas here that we're showing are really open on the left for more of the greenway on the left of the site, and the north of the site are for public uses. And then the lighter green areas in Building F are considered for private uses of the site, but that's where we see a lot of the amenity type spaces, likely a pool of nice sitting areas, sort of a change in pace from the sort of the commercial setting that we're in. And then the darker areas are specific to open space. And the open space areas, again, are specific elements of the city of Franklin that we'll have to comply with. That may mean having specific appurtenances like benches, bike racks, plazas. It could be a greenway. It could be different types of nodes and different types of activities to really activate the space as a whole. So we're highlighting those in dark green. That said, this area, again, we'll have a more usable space than we're showing, but these are the specific areas that we'll spice up and address. In terms of phasing, we expect this to be built in maybe up to 3 phases. Phase 1 happening first, and that's partly to address several factors. One is to address the stormwater components, the utility components, and sort of the main spine, the main boulevard, if you want to call it, or the main drive, I should say, of the entire site. Again, that will introduce the multifamily component, and then all of the commercial workspace on the bottom floors of D, E, and F, with phase 2 and 3 coming on sort of at a later date. Again, once the stormwater facilities are improved, once the utilities are in place, we foresee those sort of coming on. Another part of that is really understanding the market, and part of the process of going through entitlements and being able to assure prospective tenants that we have the means and the ability and the approvals to provide these types of uses. We'll quickly just talk about off-site improvements. I already hit on the fact that we're at a signalized intersection and we're improving from a safety standpoint. The main entrance of NHC today, you'll see that we're showing sort of a right in, right out. Additionally, as part of this main intersection, we're adding the 4th leg to this. When we look at doing studies, we bring in data that the city provides. We look at development that they foresee and have planned on, and then we put together a study that feels that will improve and address the development that's coming on today. So essentially on McEwen, which is sort of on the south, we'll be adding an extra lane. You'll see mostly some restriping happening, maintaining 2 northbound left turn lanes, adding a new straight through lane that will get to the site, and then restriping for a right turn lane here. And then on Cool Springs heading west, you'll see that we'll have a right decel lane coming into the site. And then we're going to add an additional left turn lane with storage, again, to sort of address some of the growth, not only for this development, for the development that's sort of happened around this area in the last several years. Quickly, just want to touch on architecture. This is the back of the site. So the top picture is the main building F, the leasing building with the commercial spaces on the bottom level. You'll see a very commercial style window appeal there. These are, again, 4 stories with some really nice masonry, brick materials with some wood tone siding. So again, trying to warm up, really have some good product, good quality, and good architectural lines. On the bottom is the view from the right. This one actually has a basement on this level due to the existing grades. Wanted to note too, as we go through the front and the sides, you'll see that every side of these buildings really has the same energy, the same quality of material shown on every side of this. So you don't ever really get a true, let's call it a back of house that you may see on other developments. Again, this is a building along the main street. I'll focus sort of on the bottom. This, again, is where you'll see a lot of the commercial space, opportunities to really activate it with benches, people, planners, foundation, landscape, light poles, and things of that nature. So really making a nice walkable space through this site. Here's just a side elevation, again, just showing the style of architecture, some of the quality that we foresee, and the scale of the buildings. Here's a site perspective that shows conceptual massing. And this is really interesting to show the scale, because as I mentioned, this is an 18-acre site. It's quite large, and you'll see the hospitality sort of up front, with the commercial components there along Cool Springs Boulevard in the front, really painting a nice, main strip coming into the site. Also wanted to point out the slip decks that I mentioned earlier. For parking, that's a key component. How do you get an appropriate development with mixed uses and still park it? Well, it's done with structured parking on something like this. And what's nice about it is the leveled parking is basically level on the top end with the main elevation of the multifamily and live work buildings, and it's one story that works with the grades of the site. And again, I'll sort of show that there on the other side, so you see how it's done sort of respectfully without having a very large and tall structured parkings that really take away from the architectural integrity of this development. In terms of massing, again, with Envision Franklin and the current zoning that's in place, allowing and sort of promoting 6 stories, it's a careful balance between fitting it in with sort of the commercial areas, how it works with the existing NHC facility, and then how it works internally when you're into a site. In terms of key dates, I just wanted to note a few. We'll be making our initial plan submittal on June 13th. We hope to have our joint conceptual workshop with the commissioner and the BOMA members on June 23rd. We'll be making a resubmittal to staff on July 7th. We hope to be heard at the July 28th Planning Commission meeting. This is a meeting for public input. And then you'll see the BOMA meetings. There's a work session on August 9, followed by the 3 readings at BOMA in August, September, and then October. Those could vary a bit just depending on the process. Sometimes the first reading and the work session happen on the same nights, but the BOMA second reading is sort of the second opportunity for public input there. With that said, I'd like to turn it over for questions. Not sure if anybody has anything, but by all means, love to turn it over and give everybody a chance to quiz us on the development.
Well, Scotty, I'd just like to say you've done a really good job. I thought it was very thorough, so thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, we're excited about it. So we're look forward to having some opportunity to advance the process with the planning department and get in front of the community and the planning commission and the BOMA members sort of at those next stages in the process. I think with that said, I'll be happy to sort of hang on here for a few more minutes in case anybody jumps on or anybody else has any questions. Joey or Amy, you may advise otherwise. If you think the questions are answered, by all means, we can hit stop and we'll send in the recording for future neighbors to watch.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, then we can go ahead and call it a night.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for everyone's time, and look forward to evolving the process. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Scotty.
Thank you, Scotty.
All right. See y'all.